If anything, this chapter is one that I think a lot of people have been waiting on for a long time. And that's getting an update onto what else has been going on with the other dragon gods and the other scenarios. What was really interesting is the Mercphobia stuff was all entirely isolated. It was all within one small, one window of what was going on in this arc, which is really interesting because you look at the two first scenarios and then you look at now, you went to Mercphobia, open and shut. You had Alderaan who got beaten without. Oh gosh, I realized I have it set up. I ended up getting through speakers, and I was like, I used to have the music go through the normal setup, and it would just kind of go through OBS. But if I do it like that, through this, it's literally just be blaring through my speakers now. It'll be fine. I'm gonna leave that in as a warning. Memory to myself for it. But as it is, you have the whole scenario now of Gray was shown with the Airneds, which is I actually really want to talk about that scenario because it's really interesting that we just got a peek into that really fast and then went right to Wendy. But this chapter laid out again a lot of really interesting information onto essentially every single thing that's left going on, which makes me think that was the whole point of like having the open and closed whole scenario with Mercphobia, because now all these other events are all going on at the same time, whereas like, okay, we got that one figured out. Hopefully Mercphobia and them will be able to add in some aid, and the fact that Mercphobia hopefully will be able to have his own power now, I would assume, and not have it be all crutched, and figure out what's going on with him to where he can actually put in some efforts would be really nice, or at least do something. Maybe his power will come back gradually now that because I assume if it has nothing to do with the Elefsaria tablet thing, it was what Ignia was doing with his whole plan was what suddenly gimped him. Because like the only other option is the fact that he fought like Natsu with his Asterius powers, and maybe that just somehow does something to people's powers. I don't really know. I mean, there's the evidence is like connected if you count like him with Fairy Heart Zeref, but like we don't know if those two scenarios are from the same thing with only one. Like if we get to the third time, I feel like that's just kind of like, okay, now we have a strong pattern rather than just two scenarios that might not be from the same thing, but could be from the same thing. But Urza being told that she is the only one that can save the town. So in the scenario that I thought of was we were going to have, okay, the first place you destroy the Lacrima, the dragon people are saved. Okay, here's where the dragon Lacrima was defeated, but by Ferris's crew, so they're going to induce black magic onto people, and we're going to have a black magic scenario. And maybe we have something where Urza fights some people with her Nakagami armor, and she has to undo the magic in the process of it. But it's like maybe like she does some new technique where instead of it being a slash, she does like an AoE, and it like saves some people. But I don't know. I feel like it would be a huge. It's not worth the amount of exchange. It would have to be something that is a lot easier than that, because like with the Lacrima, it's like you destroyed the Lacrima, everybody just turned back. Whereas like in this scenario too, everybody that is turned into a dragon is still turned into a dragon, which either means that everybody forward that is dragon, dragonified dragon is. I'm trying to remember because now we have two different versions, I guess, of dragonification and dragonization. But having these as a process, is it forward? And even if you destroy the Lacrima, anybody affected by it is going to be permanently altered, or is that because Ignia is doing it right now? Because the interesting thing about what we still don't know exactly about like the type of mind control effect that's going on here, because we have like with the people, there are people that are, like at least with Caramel, that we have people with their still their intelligence, but it's like how it was with the whiteout, where they're like she still has her allegiance to Mercphobia, but in a completely different scenario, to where it's like normally like we know how she would behave, but now she's like her but the aggressor with these powers. It's kind of like again with the whiteout when Ferris did it when she was buffed by Celine, to where she can control you, but you act like yourself, but with your allegiance towards her. Like otherwise, you're completely normal. It's not like you're a mindless slave. Like for instance, like you have Zatch from the movie, and he has the whole thing. Oh, Dragon Cry, not from Phoenix Priestess, but he like when he does it, it's more of like he's forcing your body, and you're still aware. Like there's different kinds. Like we have like like it's also similar to like the dragon manipulation magic the future rogue had, to where the dragons would act in their normal state, but he's able to kind of like put their allegiance towards him, and they just act in their own, generally in their own state, but in towards his will, kind of thing. But at the same time, I'm wondering, like, is Ignia doing this? Because I think it'd be really cool if Ignia could just do this, and this is, or maybe it's just like an effect being around him. He can turn people into dragons. Maybe he'll turn Urza into a dragon. But with the whole mixture of it, like they just have like the people that are black magic induced and the people that are dragon buffed, completely just attacking each other, fighting to the death. I don't really know what exactly Midnight thought Urza was going to do in this scenario, because to what I thought it was going to be, Urza could have done something. I think there could have been a plan where Urza could have figured something out. Whereas now, Urza, not only she's in a much weirder scenario, you now have Ignia and Ferris just, up there watching. And I don't see anything Urza's gonna do in this scenario. Like, she got her base form pressed by Zero. I imagine that if she fought Zero and they fought a full fight, there's still, like, we don't really know anything about Zero, where he's at right now, but it's like, if Urza fights him and wins, I imagine it would take, like, full power Urza to beat him. Whereas, like, there's no way I think she could do anything about either Ignia or Ferris. Because, like, Ignia, even in this, in his humanoid form, is just completely above Urza in every single possibility. So I just don't really see what she can do. But we have a really nice interaction as well between Ignia and Ferris. Ferris is talking about, like, why he's turning people into humans, and, like, is it fun? And he's not doing it for fun. He's doing it and saturating the world of dragons, as he says, a really cool line, which I think is really, I think he's fine to do. I think that, like, Ignia, what he's doing, I think what he's doing is the right thing, rather. And two, I think it's right for him, because the dragons were unfairly slaughtered and driven to near extinction by Acnologia. And it's like, we know that now that there were not as many, it seemed like they were a minority, but there were humans that wanted to, or dragons rather, that want to coexist with humans even at that point. So it's very unfair that the dragons were just, and especially with, like, the dragons that were anti-human but, like, were never given a chance to switch over. And I think that's a really important thing, is there has to be, like, scenarios where it's like, okay, well, who's in the wrong in like, if this dragon versus this, whatever neighboring body of people, who is the one causing the issues? But, like, because at that point, it's like, you also have to, because it's like, oh yeah, you could have, like, people who've been living here, but it's like a dragon could have been living in this area way longer than, like, X village has lived. It's like one of those kind of things. There's stuff with the dragons that I think is very unfair, that they were just slaughtered indiscriminately by Acnologia. So Ignia, I think, is in the full justified rights to bring his species back into the world, but I also think that's the right thing to do. Just for the sake of the world, I think that their world, naturally, with the magic getting stronger just as time progresses, like, more potent in the environment, and dragons and, like, stuff like the natural other species and even the artificial species like the Aetherius should all just naturally, I think, exist more in the world. I don't think the dragon should be exterminated, but I also don't think the humans should be exterminated. I think that it should all just be at a point where it should be what's best for the state of everything in the world, which would be really interesting if we get to, like, a next gen thing. And my old theory that dragons essentially become, like, WMDs for these other country, and they see who has the most dragons, and it's like a sign of power. Because also, if there's a large wave of dragons coming back there, that should logically mean that there'll be a lot of, in the next couple years, be more dragon slayers. There's a lot that could be really set up if Ignia's plan mostly works, and I think Ignia's double setup of having, like, big goals is in a way to have him succeed and where he fails, because eventually, obviously, he's going to be defeated. It's not like Ignia is going to win and Natsu's going to die, and then, like, the series just ends and Ignia full out never takes an L. Obviously at the very end of his story, he's going to be defeated, but I'm hoping that his point where he fails is, like, burning the world down, but in bringing the dragons back, he succeeds. That's something that I think would be really cool, because with Ferris, I think it'd be really cool if Ferris does something similar, where maybe she makes some form of, like, she does some form of spell or makes some form of almost magic event, to where, Oh yeah, I made a perpetual, kind of like she does something similar to Zareth, but instead she's like I casted a perpetual spell that naturally will work on the environment, and Aetherius demons will just spawn over time from the natural magic world. I think that would be really cool. One thing Mishima has done really well with the fairy tale world that I don't think any of the other verses have done too much of. I would say personally, like the closest other series that has set it up really well is like with Bleach, and there's other series that have it, but like just the way that like classes are built is the way that Mishima, if he keeps doing it, is setting up the world for the level of options and the level of just kind of like ways that characters can exist and take their pathways for abilities. Because say you're somebody who is like um say because it's going to depend too. I'm very curious as to exactly the structure of the dragons in the future. But say you're like a not only you're somebody born in the verse, you're a character, not like a human. But it's like you could be a dragon that is like a person turned into a dragon, sentient, and then maybe born in, as a uh, someone kind of like Urza, where they're human born, but they're from a dragon, and they're some form of special trait like that. You have obviously anything that goes on with um, like special bloodlines or anything going on with like weird natural effects, kind of like Mira Jane, and it's having this natural affinity with um, takeover and demons and stuff. So and I think it'd be really cool to have like if you in the future had like an Aetherius character, because if you say like had an Aetherius that became like say just as a member of the main cast for like a next gen kind of story, you would have this scenario where you would have a type of character who's supposed to be dedicated to like a goal but has no goal that he was given. So he would just like be this dude who would almost always have like a partial emptiness in him and looking for like an existence to have, which would be really interesting. It'd be really cool. Just it's like the idea of the puppet trying to find a heart or something to like count it to live in, trying to find a soul. I think that would be a really neat, just kind of like existence, because it would be something that would apply to almost any of them, and it would be a really cool kind of species to have as this wild card. That it's like you could easily have these people be like very quickly good or very quickly evil, and naturally, just as Aetherius, they should be more powerful than the average human. And with stuff like the natural magic in the world going up, the Aetherius naturally could spawn at stronger levels and stronger capabilities. It just depends. Um, but yeah, Urza, I don't think Urza had any chance here. Her getting confronted by Wed though was so cool. I was really hoping that we would have seen Wed and her have some form of encounter before he turns into a dragon. Like for some reason because of his whole thing, maybe he took the thing last, the power for it, and then he fights Urza and he's turning into a dragon. But no, he just comes in already swinging. He has this amazing form. He looks really sick. I love his design. His armor is like what's funny is like his face is shadowed on side of his helmet, but like the next time you see it as like the panel turns, it's way lighter and it's just the angle. So I'm wondering what exactly his dragon attribute is supposed to be, because his wings are definitely black. When he swings at Urza, you see the next panel, his tail is definitely like a lighter color, I'm guessing closer to his hair, and his armor is mostly dark, seemingly like the actual armor itself seems to be dark except for the most part the mask, but it's like dark whenever we're up against it. So I'm wondering if that's maybe has to do with the power. Is he a black dragon? I'm very 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 curious as to how his whole setup is going to be with his powers, because with with Brian, I assumed yeah he's just going to be the enhanced version of what he had, but we don't really know anything about Wed's magic whatsoever. All we know is that he has a sword that he put fire magic on. That's it. That's the only thing we know about it. We need an any description. You could make a really good just general idea of what Brian's magic is based off of the first like little showing of it. He's got these other mouths, he can attack with them, but also he will eat stuff like other people's magic and things and then spit it back out, and seems to be able just to spit other stuff out. Like he just seemed to be able to spit fire back out. I don't know if that means it was just Natsu's fire from way earlier or just fire in general, but he can just spit at stuff that he's eaten back out. It's not like a crazy idea power. So him as a dragon, though, I want to see him more of like a higher scale, like him being able to open multiple mouths at the same time, doing something like that, and being this big, weird, almost Cthulhian dragon monster. I'm still also really curious if we're gonna have them go further instead of just this hybrid form, because I would love to see Brian again and him being in a full dragon form and him and Natsu having a full fight where Natsu actually fights him at the full scale. I think that would be really cool. Plus, again, it'd be really cool just to see like that style dragon. It'd be really, really badass to see all the weird mouths on his at his full power. But Urza versus Wed, I don't see Urza winning this encounter whatsoever. What I'm kind of hoping is going to happen is we're going to have Urza I think is gonna not be able to do anything here. I don't see how she can beat him at the moment whatsoever. So I'm hoping that she gets away, and we have to have, I think, a scenario where you have, say, the third or fifth like best sword in the continent shows up, and maybe they lose to Blade, or they like, oh, I've been, they're dragonified or something. Like maybe Blade loses and Ferris is like, oh, I need to find a better, like, well, let's say this. I'm just gonna throw a scenario out there. Okay, let me throw a quick little idea scenario out there for the sake of theory. You have the Erasion Saints for the Erasion Sex fight. Only Zero and Gate win. Let's just say that. Only Zero and Gate win their fights. The rest are defeated. And Ferris is like, man, I should stick more to these Aetherius made from human bodies type thing. And go and decides to go, and she says, oh, I've got 2 other corpses to use, but I need 2 more. And she goes and she finds, like, I don't know, say like the 3rd or the 4th best sword on the continent or something. Maybe the 3rd best. Because I feel like assuming Wed is correct, and I feel like at this point he has to be correct in this form, that he's the number 1 swordsman on the continent, and so I automatically will assume that number 2 is Suzaku. Because like I was already like with Suzaku and Wed, it was hard to really argue, but I feel like Wed is somebody who wouldn't overlook Suzaku for no reason. So as far as we know, he is better than Suzaku. So maybe he wanted to. So I would assume that it's just like at that point, bring in number 3, maybe turn him into a Black Wizard, and then have him fight Urza, and Urza beats him at some point. Like Urza has a really rough fight, beats him, and is able to have like some really cool, I don't know, limit break scenario. We see like a whole new level of what Urza's capable of, so she can go fight Wed. And then I would love at that point, like at that point, my dream idea, it's like Urza loses, fights this new guy, goes, fights Wed again, and has one of those fights where she loses, but she fights him again in the same arc. Like fights him early, relatively early, loses, fights him way later in the arc, and then defeats him and wins. I think that would be really cool. That's like my dream idea for like the Wed fight. I just want to see, like, I want this guy to be on a rampage for a while. Is the thing. I want his defeat to feel really, really satisfying. He looks so cool, because it's like, obviously, like every time it's like a bad guy who looks really cool, it's up. You gotta keep in mind, at some point this guy's gonna be defeated. How is he defeated? What is the end going to be like? And most importantly, what is his time going to be like in the point between now and his end? And we only had a little bit of Wed in his introduction, but he seems really cool, and I just really like his personality. He doesn't seem like real evil. He seems just really wants to go with like his whole squad's deal, because he's got his loyalty to the guild or Ignia, which we don't know in full detail exactly where he's going with it, because we don't know a whole lot about him. But we know he's determined to be the best with the sword in the world, and now he is in this state to where I just don't see any opposition, because nobody else is wielding a sword that even seems to be close to him, because none of the other dragon gods wield a sword. But after that point, we get to Gray. Gray and Viernus is really interesting to me, because one thing I was talking about earlier about the whole mind control thing is that there's different types. This, though, I would assume it has to do with alchemy, and maybe it does something to work with the dragon gods, because it's through also having dragon powers through Igni or something. That it's like converts their thoughts into something where it alters like their thoughts, and it makes it so oh, that's why they act like this. And at that point, I wonder, is Viernes going to be controlled by this? Because he's a stronger alchemist than both the Signario sisters. So would he, at this point, it'd be like kind of like a Madara situation where even though it affects him to bring him back to life, he just snaps out of it. He just, yeah, this little shit doesn't work on me. I'm very curious as to that because his is the most interesting setup. And this was why I wish we found about this earlier, because Gray's is the most interesting now. I figured we would have Gray versus Alderaan initially, and it would have like whole thing like we would have maybe some like really cool giant like, I think my initial thing was like Gray and Gray was gonna team up with Athena, and you were gonna have like really large scale ice makes, and Athena was gonna be doing these really cool just like flight and like shot panels with those cool kind of guns that like Dragon Slayer like energy guns that she had on her that we saw in the flashbacks. That was my initial guess, but we ended up getting Alderaan where Urza was, and now Iggy and Ferris are there. The Oracion Seis are fighting the Oracion Sex. Ursa's fighting Wed now. Completely complete things. I figured Igni and Ferris were gonna go to a completely isolated scenario, and we were gonna have them just fighting in their own zone. I'm still assuming they're going to, because like I don't think they could fight here at all. They're gonna immediately destroy this little town, and especially because Urza and Wed are fighting. So if they fight, they're gonna like completely interrupt this battle. And I feel like Igni as a guy would just be like, nah, I'm not gonna do that to Wed. Let's go somewhere else. But with Viernes, I'm very intrigued on if Viernes is going to talk to Gray, because I think that he's not going to be under the control, and he's just going to have a conversation. I saw some people speculating that they were going to have Athena show up. I don't think so. I'm still wondering about what's going to happen. Like, is there anything going to be going on with Dogromag, or what's going to be going on with that? Because I would rather like have him show up and maybe Athena goes to do that. Just because I really want to see like Gray and Viernes just have a conversation and they interact. And there's for some reason that, because I think it'd be cool that if Viernes wasn't in control, or sorry, was in control, he wasn't being controlled, but he wanted to go with the plan where he's like, listen, I'm alive again. I don't want to go up against, because I think that he knows he can't beat Ignia is the thing. I think he just was like, I'm just gonna kind of chill, because Ignia is not gonna come after him right now, at least as of at the moment. I think that right now Viernes should knows he's like got something going on, and maybe he's gonna talk to Gray, and I just want to have some like cool scenario where they get in conversation, and he ends up kind of teaching Gray a little bit of alchemy, and they have just like a, for some reason that we have some form of moment. Like he's like, hey, I saw you in my guild earlier, and like he just has like a funny like little interaction. I think it'd be really cool, because like the main thing about Viernes that bothered me in his arc wasn't that his fight wasn't as long. It was like there's obviously like I wanted to see him do more alchemy and to see Viernes do more of his abilities. That was kind of weird, and I'm hoping we end up getting that this arc. But it was also I would say, well, also in that complaint, but like the primary thing is we didn't get like anything about his personality. We really, he said barely any lines, and I'm hoping so bad that like right now, well, not right now, I guess in the next chapter. Well, no, because we're gonna be next couple chapters, because we're gonna be getting this Wendy and Celine stuff first, I would assume, and figure out what's going on with this. And maybe we'll get that, like we'll get it peered over really fast in a chapter or two, because I'm really hoping that we just have like a cool conversation between them, and he's not hostile to Gray, and he's just like, listen, he just like he just has like a moment where he's like, listen, I don't even want to deal with this right now. I just want to kind of get this going, and I want to just kind of go back to what I was doing. Because the thing that I think about him is interesting when you think about the other dragon gods, is he was researching stuff for obviously being able to deal with them, but he wasn't actively doing anything problematic. He probably was the least problematic besides Merc, because Merc only was losing power because of what was going on with Ferris. When it looks like goes over to Celine, Celine was also going to other worlds and fucking up other worlds and causing problems over there. With Alderaan has all these fanatics that immediately committed suicide upon his awakening, and then And then he was like, all right, humans gotta go. And then like immediately was like ready to go on a world-ending genocide spree. Viernes, as far as we know, like he doesn't like humans, but he wasn't doing anything actively really bad, and he could have easily been doing things actively bad. But so I think that like I think at least personality wise, if we like get to see him, he's gonna be like a little salty. Like this is how I imagine it to be. He'd be salty that he lost, but he's like, well, I'm alive again, so that's not so bad. And then he's gonna be like, maybe like try and talk to Gray a little bit, like not see Gray as a threat. And that's one of the things I think would be really cool, is because he's not in an environment where I think that he would be have to worry about anything. There's no dragon slayers around. There's nothing that is dangerous to him. So we could just have a moment where he just talks to Gray. But maybe we have something where he liked, like something happened where he's like, hey, and he took a liking to Gray and he wants to talk to him. Because I think that's how dragons are naturally in the verse. Is if you did something that caught the attention of that dragon, something that was in that dragon's personality that made you suddenly interesting to them in some way, shape, or form, that's how you get to the favor and talk to him. I think that would be really cool for Gray. Because what's interesting with too, there's two things really interesting with Gray. For one, one is if you go back to Mishima's old, not if you go to his original one shot, his main character is a wizard. But if you go to the notes for Wraithmaster, originally Haru was supposed to be an alchemist, and now we have Natsu, who is obviously doing stuff with magic, and Gray, who is primarily using magic, but also has curse power and stuff. And now we know for sure that that Devil Slaying has a black magic. So Gray has black magic, and he gains curse power. And there's a lot of comparison between make magic and alchemy, which I feel like has to be intentional. And out of everybody, the one that is now here alone is Gray, and Gray was the one that was in Gold Owl and had a lot of just general interactions with stuff like that. So I'm very interested in this one. Out of all of them, this is the one that I think has the most world, not like as much world building, but like I guess like direct story and structure building of just finding out about, again, like Viernes and seeing exactly what his deal is, and seeing where this whole strange plotline is going to go. Because with Wendy, really, when you look at Wendy's scenario, I think Wendy has a really strong scenario and has the strongest out of everybody. Because if you went into every single one of these scenarios with no problems, like, and we didn't know about any of these, so Gray is currently alone, has literally solo. If you didn't have this stuff with everything else that's going on in Dreamwheel and you just had Alderaan, Urza would have to 1v5 Alderaan's whole setup. She would have to get onto Alderaan. She would have to defeat Wolfen, Gears, Doom, and Metro, and the Godseed Brain. So it would just be really difficult of a fight for her. I don't think that one would be super impossible for Urza, to be crazy honest. It just depends on a lot of factors. The problem would be like if Urza knows, because that's an important thing. Urza knows beforehand. If she took out Gears immediately, here's the thing, because like I don't think that, like, from what we have from the Misaki fight, Urza has the potential. She's not like, her normal capabilities are not at that level, but she has the raw, like, full charge up attack ult potential. But the problem is if the God Seeds are alive, she has no chance. If she can take down the God Seeds strategically, then she's got it. I think she could, based off the Misaki fights, because like Misaki, we know should be able to do generally the same thing as Suzaku and Natsu, where they were able to defeat Dragon Gods. Like, obviously Natsu had other people going. I think Natsu could have beaten the other God Seeds, just because he figured out Wolfen. I don't think Doom or Metro or Gears would be a problem. It just depends on entirely, like, if Alderaan sends them at you, or if they just come at you naturally, and what he does with them. Because if he keeps them separate, then obviously no. But if you take them out immediately, but obviously the biggest problem would be Gears. I think that Urza, though, would get the ulterior protection, so I think she'd be fine. And then making sure to take out Doom really fast, because those two are the ones you really have to worry about. Because with Metro just seems more of a problem where he can overwhelm you, and with Wolfen, I think Wolfen really is just like if you can figure out around him, he's not too much of a problem. I'm curious to know still because like Wolfen wasn't like fully defeated. It was more of like he just was kept away as precautionary. He's just kind of like his own thing. But at the same time, it's like Urza. I think at that point could defeat Alderaan. So it's like okay, anybody who's able to overcome the scenario and do it smartly, because it's like Dogramags is just really difficult in layout. Alderaan's, if you know how to do it and you're able to get around these hacks, but you still have to be able to beat the main body. Um, if you're able to do that, I think a couple characters can, because he's one that it's like you entirely just can beat him through mechanics, and then you just have to meet that power threshold because it doesn't seem to be as high if you meet them versus obviously at full power. And that just seems to be such a dramatic gap between what Natsu was able to do, or like fully buffed Dogramag, or as they were commenting literally on Ignia versus Sleene, of the sheer gap between the nerf forms and the full forms. So with them, you have just massive scenarios of difference. Like when I was gonna say Urza, and as like I mean as you say Wendy, but like Natsu didn't have anybody right away. He went to go fight Brian, so you don't really count him. Lucy ended up having Brandish as support, plus like her enemies really until then were just Caramel and then Merc. Wendy has like the best scenario really, because if she heals everybody, she has all of the Dark Dragon Slayer Knights, and she has the original Diablos trio. So like she has an entire 7 set of aid right there. And keep in mind, I mean like Suzaku, Kirin, Misaki, and Haku all right there. Like in addition, Wendy buffing them, because like keep in mind, Wendy's buffs all are great. Wendy has amazing buffs that she can use. She can give you straight stat doubles to all of your base, like defense, offense, speed. She can fully take away status effects. I'm so like one of the things I thought initially, I thought it was gonna have Lucy fight against Sleene, because I think that Lucy's way of magic is an idea, if she can get strong enough to it, a natural way to counter Celine's portals. Because if she can get to where she can close them using like the base idea from what we know with Anna, that's the base idea for celestial spirit magic is you are opening and closing doorways of space. So in idea, I think that Lucy would be able to counter that ability if she got strong enough and she focused purely on that. Obviously, like, and it depends on like if Celine's amount of effort, but in like I feel like if everybody's fighting her at the same time and you time them, you're not doing every single one, but you pick and choose what portals to thwart, then you would be able to have a really good addition to it. But this is now Wendy here. But Wendy was I think my second one over here, because initially I thought it was going to be Ursula way back when at some point it's going to be finding Sleene, but in this scenario, because we saw she was going against out in Jamil, my second switch was to have Wendy over here because I think she's just going to have the most utility. But now she has all these people that she heals. I think that she's relatively going to be fine. I don't really see too much of a problem for her in this scenario as much. Like Celine's obviously still really powerful, but Wendy just seems to have she has 7 additional people. I'm still really curious if we're gonna get any more additional people for Diablos. I would love to have like 2 new Dragon Slayers in Diablos, 2 just like kind of lower people they can have for just cool. Oh, I'm a Dragon Slayer of X thing. Like you have. I'm trying to think actually. I kind of want 3 because I want like one funny one. I want one really cool new one, and I want one that is just like neat. There's like one really silly Dragon Slayer design. Like I'm a bread dragon slayer. It's like, yeah, I got kind of shafted, and it's like something like it's like a lower level dragon that just got fat and lazy, and it just feeds bakeries or something and farms and towns. It's a really low to the ground dragon. It's like, yeah, I'm new. And then you have like some guy who's like, oh, I don't know, I'm trying to think of what's something that's really slightly useful but not great. I'm trying to think of something just kind of gimmicky. I'll have to think of that. And then you just have something really cool, like, oh, I'm a blood dragon slayer. So I'm trying to think of something really gimmicky of like, oh, I'm a letter dragon slayer, and it's like that's some weird thing with paper and shit. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something weird that could be really just neat and utility wise. And it's like, oh yeah, I can directly communicate with people in real time through letters anywhere in the world. and then you like become a big cool paper origami dragon. I'm just thinking that'd be kind of neat. I think that'd be kind of cool. But at the same time, be like, how does this even work? I kind of like that a little bit. The Dragon Eaters. I like that there's like these weird dragons that can't exist, and it's like, yeah, there's just like these races that we kind of just found. Because I think that would make sense if, like, with dragons as too, is like there would have these like smaller sub races that just exist out in the world that aren't as known. But you know, obviously, with them being wiped out, maybe the smaller ones are amongst the few that were remaining. You know, stuff like that. But anyway, solid stuff for the chapter. I really liked it. Like I said, a lot of just general seeing stuff around. I'm very intrigued, like I said, about the Gray and Viernes interaction. I think Wendy's stuff is going to be pretty solid, but I think hers is going to be the easiest one in terms of just going into it. Selena's obviously a much more odd fight than Mercphobia, but Mercphobia didn't have aggression to him the same way. And that's one of the things I was talking about is Selene didn't kill anybody here, so I don't think she has that again type of way of hyper threat. Again, like if this was like the way that we saw Merc in initially when he showed up, it'd be a little more so like in the story when he was controlled by Ferris. But how he was from the beginning of this arc, he just again he acted more of just like an animal protecting his territory, and then he was taking down a piece of food to go eat. So it's all based on like from what we've seen on lower instincts to me, like lower to the ground instincts. So Selene I think will be in the same area, and with Wendy's level of utility and the resources they have available to them now that they have all the other Dragon Eaters available, I just don't really see it being too much of a problem for them to handle. So we'll see. One thing I would really hope to get out of this next couple chapters while we're here with Wendy and all them is that, again, like I said, I'd love to see a couple more members of Diablos. And I'd love to get some confirmation on exactly the Dragon Slayer abilities of the members of each of Diablos. And just like we get like a panel where they say, okay, like if Wendy's like, hey, I need to figure out what's going on and what we're working with. What do we have to what do we got? And it's like then we find out like these two or three new people, and we have a little panel. It's literally just like one of those those strip panels where it takes up maybe like a fourth or fifth of the page, and it's 2 pages of this essentially. And we have the 7 that we see here and like 3 new guys, let's say, and it's each one. It's my name is blank. I'm this Dragon Slayer. I control this and this, and they just go over each of their thing where they have a little description, and then Wendy just contemplates about options. But then we just have something where it's a straight confirmation for stuff like what exactly is Haku or Misaki, because like we know the colors, but they're not the colors exactly. Because like for instance, Suzaku's is, I know he's been called like the Scarlet Dragon at some points, but it's, as far as I know, it should be Vermilion because the Vermilion bird is what he's supposed to be colored or themed after. But to my knowledge, I'm pretty sure. But he's a sword saint Dragon Slayer. Haku's is white tiger, but like he has his power has to do with like yarn or strings and then stuff like that. It's really weird. And stuff with Kieran too. Kieran's is the golden, but we know from his dragon itself, it's a lightning dragon. It's the king of lightning dragons, and we know that it's completely different than a gold dragon like Viernes. And I think that's just a mistranslation because it should be gold. I don't think golden, but I think he's just calling it. It was originally yellow, and I think it should be yellow. I don't know they changed it to that, but it should be probably. I think it's something interchangeable in the wording. I'm not too sure, but either way, it should be. It's not the same thing. Obviously, we know based off just Alexion and Viernes and their differences of species. One is a lightning and one is a gold dragon. Literally, very very different attributes. Some very different species of dragon. So, to me, at that point, it makes me wonder like where they're going to kind of have that whole setup with getting that information to us. Again, unknown. We'll see. I would love to figure out what exactly they are because Haku's is very weird. Misaki's is weird. Is she an Azure Dragon? Is an Azure Dragon have to do with dreams? Because that's how she describes her abilities. Haku's again white. What does white tiger have to do with yarn? Is it because he's a cat? I don't know. Anyway, other than that, like I rambled on a little bit at the end just because I was like really interested at seeing, because I want to know what we're going to be getting out of like the stuff with like Wendy's scenario that's going to be valuable to us, because now we're going to have Wendy isolated with all of the Diablos people. So I would assume we're going to get a couple focus chapters of the Diablos members, and I'm really interested in that because I've talked about it since the start of 100 Years Quest. I really like the Diablos Guild, and I would love to just get some time with them. I'm very happy. Like, I actually got Scullion on panel after so long, and actually got Scullion to talk. So I'm very interested to see where this is going to go. So we'll see the next chapter. We got another 2 weeks to wait, see how things are. Happy that Kieran's hat is there, but we need to get this man a replacement of a coffin, because the coffin weapon was just really cool. I can't have this man fighting without it. But happy to see my man Scullion back. Happy to see Suzaku back. Very stoked just to see what they're going to be doing in the next couple chapters, and again to find out a little bit more about them if possible, and to find out a little bit more about their abilities. So anyway, talk to you guys later.